to radio since, like I was 16 or something, and started off as a community radio volunteer and did music shows and then sort of moved slowly into journalism. Yeah, it's funny to try and think back, because I was doing journalism before, before 95 or whatever it is, and it is weird to sort of think back, how did you do the research so easily? And I mean, it's just made everything much easier, really. I mean, one thing that concerns me about the whole deal is just the overflow of information, and I just think that the whole, everyone becoming ADHD is a little bit of a problem. Like, you've got all this information and all these podcasts, but I just find increasingly that people are just skimming everything and they're not really absorbing it very well. So I think that's a bit of a problem, especially for journalists that, you want them to be more in-depth, more investigative, and not skim over everything. But it's almost like the technology in a way is mitigating against that. But then, on the other hand, as I say, it can be really good for contacts, or, finding people to talk about something that they're just not an obvious organisation or a lobby group or whatever to go to. You can just tweet it and you might find something good. So in that sense, it can be really helpful. We do podcast most of our talks programs. We don't podcast any music shows, but there are copyright issues on that. I mean, for example, Radio National is almost all of their shows are podcast, and they have a huge podcast audience, millions every month, probably much more than they have in the free-to-air. So it is definitely something that we should do more of. And there is a new website. We've got the money for a new website, and that will be one of the key things. There are some shows, for whatever reason, are really big. For example, like a science show, which is called Diffusion, just a half-hour science show every week, and it's got multiple tens of thousands of listeners, and most of them are overseas. I don't know whether that's because there are not a lot of science programs available or what it is, but that's one example that's really taken off. Well, I guess for all community stations, we're supposed to be providing some sort of alternative to the mainstream. So we're aiming to do something a little bit different to commercial radio or the ABC, and I guess also give people access who don't easily get access to the mainstream media. I think that's one of the things that attracts me most about it, is that editorially you've got probably the most freedom anywhere you could work. I can think of very, very few examples of where you're restrained, or there's some complaint, or you have to retract something, or there's some area where people don't want you to go. So in that sense, I think it's excellent. In fact, I'm surprised that people who work in community radio don't use that freedom more. Even though they've got that freedom, sometimes they gravitate to too much to follow the other media. Because the demographics of a station like this is so diverse, so on Sunday you'll have a program for the Lebanese community, and then you'll have a science show the next day, and then you'll have a program for the gay community. A lot of it is very niche, so there's not the same sort of pressure as there might be, say, even for the Sydney Morning Herald, that they think they've done all the surveys and they work out exactly what their audience is, their income, their lifestyle, and they're sort of trying to target it all to them. That happens less in our situation, partly because there are multiple different small audiences. More and more people are into podcasting and listen on demand, but I do think that a lot of people are wedded to the idea of listening to live radio. So I think it obviously has affected and eroded audiences to a degree, because there's so many different options for people. But I think, radio will live on.